What's going on, everybody? Back again today doing another Toyline review, and as you can see, we've got quite a few DC characters, DC figures here in front of us. This is going to be over in the title I know it says DC Universe Classics, but it's really just the entirety of Mattel's DC action figure collection that they've produced. And it encompasses almost 4 different toy lines, but they're all pretty much the same thing. So, the actual DC Universe Classics toy line started in 2008. But prior to that, let's see here, we had a line of DC figures that was called DC Superheroes. And it featured, kind of an alternation between Superman and Superman related characters, and then Batman and Batman related characters. So you would have a Superman wave and then a Batman wave and then a Superman wave and a Batman wave. And just for clarification, the figures I have here that are from that line are this Supergirl, Superman right here, this Batman back here, and that's probably about it. Now, as you can see, all of these figures, regardless of which line they are from, are more or less in scale with one another. There are a couple that are too tall, and we'll get into those later on, but for the most part, they all fit together. So as I said, we started with the DC Superheroes line, and then in 2008, they decided that they wanted to branch out and do more than just Superman and Batman characters. So they created the DC Universe Classics toy line. This started out as exactly what it sounds. It was DC, all DC characters, and it was all very classic interpretations of the characters. As you can see here, this Wonder Woman is from DC Universe Classics, and it's her very classic look. Martian Manhunter, very classic, generic look. Stuff like that. What else? Hawkgirl, classic look. Jon Stewart, classic look. So as the time went on, they started to kind of adapt. They pretty much made classic renditions of every single character imaginable, and then they decided, okay, let's do some updated versions, like this Flash. They used the exact same body mold, exact same costume for Flash, the original Flash. They just gave it gold boots and a slight variation to the color red, and instead of yellow they used gold. And then for the head, they gave it a new head sculpt, and they called it the Wally West Flash. Over here with this Aquaman, this is another DC Universe classic, but as you can see, it's definitely not the classic Aquaman that we're all used to from like old school comic books and the Super Friends cartoon. This is the 90s Aquaman, where he's missing a hand and has the harpoon hand and has the long hair, and it's the more edgier, cool Aquaman. But yeah, so that line went on for a very long time, from 2008 into, I can't remember, quite a long time. And then after that, they decided to kind of back off of DC Universe Classics. They stopped making them, but they really didn't. All they did was rebrand the line and give it a new name, and this time it was called DC Unlimited and Batman Unlimited. And they were 2 separate lines. And unfortunately, I do not have any figures from that particular iteration of the toy line. But they were pretty much the same thing as what you see here. The DC Unlimited line featured characters like Flash, Superman, Shazam, Martian Man. It was everyone other than Batman and Batman characters. And then they had a separate line just for Batman and Batman related characters called Batman Unlimited. But it was the same thing, 6-inch scale. The articulation was all the same. They've got universal joints in the head, universal jointed shoulders, bicep swivels, single jointed elbows, waist swivels, universal hip joints. They have a lot of articulation. It's not quite up to the standard of Marvel Legends, nor is it up to what Todd McFarlane is putting into his DC Multiverse line right now, but this was very good for me. Too much articulation for me, it just makes the figures harder to pose and harder to stand up. They lose their balance and they fall over. And as if you collect toys, you know that like if one of them falls over, they're all falling over. It's a domino effect. So I thought these had just the right amount of articulation, and that pretty much remained static throughout all iterations of the line. So after the Unlimited line, that is when they rebranded it again into DC Multiverse. And I do happen to have a few figures from the DC Multiverse line. This Red Hood right here, this KG Beast, Kyle Rayner, and the Rebirth Wonder Woman, and also Alfred. Now this is when things got to be a little weird. So this version of Kyle Rayner is his 1990s Justice League version, and he's supposed to be like a teenager or like an early college student. But as you can see, if we stand him right here, right next to Superman, he is bigger and kind of bulkier and taller than Superman, which is kind of a problem. When he's in a display with a ton of these all together, it doesn't really matter, it can't really tell. But when you put him right up next to another character, especially someone like Superman, and he seems bigger and bulkier, then there's a problem. Another thing to look out for would be with this Alfred figure. Basic comic book Alfred, but if we stand him next to Batman, you can clearly see Alfred is much taller than Batman, which is also weird. But like I said, in an overall big display of figures, you're not going to be able to tell. So it works out alright. Red Hood is shorter, Wonder Woman is the appropriate size, and KG Beast is the appropriate size. Now at this point in the toy line with the DC Multiverse line, this is where we started to see a lot, and I mean a lot, of really bad quality control issues. The sculpting was terrible, articulation was pretty much the same, but it's just the sculpting of the bodies and the paint quality control was terrible. There were paint defects everywhere on the figures. They just looked like absolute trash. Every once in a while you got a nice one, like Red Hood, Kyle Rayner, Wonder Woman, Alfred, KG Beast turned out okay, but that's, you know, five figures out of a really long running toy line. I think the first wave of the multiverse branded version of the line was like 2016, and yeah, 2016 all the way to 2019, and in those 3 years we only got a handful of really good figures. They just really started to slip, and it's because if you've seen my video about the Masters of the Universe Classics toy line, I mentioned that those figures were done by the Four Horsemen. So were these. From the DC superheroes all the way through classics, these figures were done by the Four Horsemen. So that explains why the high quality. After that, the Horsemen left Mattel and started to do other things. So that kind of explains why the quality went down. Now, another thing to watch out for is certain things they did with this toy line in some of the figures, such as like with Hawkgirl, for example. She looks awesome. Those wings are badass. But if you don't put her on something like a flight stand, she will just fall. It is damn near impossible to get her to stand up. Those wings just make her so back heavy that she will fall. And she's not the only character in this line like that. You know, they just some things, like they got so distracted making one thing perfect, like making the wings look awesome, that they just totally neglected the fact that it would not allow the character to stand. And I'm pretty sure Hawkgirl did not come with a flight stand. I bought her loose online, but I'm pretty sure in her box, like sealed in the case, she did not come with a flight stand. They all came with like a little base stand you could set on the table and stand them on. But like I said, it really wasn't working for her and other characters like her with big wings or big thick capes. That was another issue, is capes. A lot of times the cape would hinder articulation on like Superman or a version of Batman, or it would just not allow them to stand up very well because it made them so back heavy. But if you played around with it enough, you could usually get them in a good position. Excuse me. So overall, I do really like this line. And if it's a question between this line, and by this line I mean the overall, it's just, you know, Mattel DC. In the title I get it, I'm calling it DC Universe Classics, but it's really just all of Mattel's DC figures. It's a great toy line. I would say it is the definitive DC action figure toy line to collect. And if it's a question between this one or McFarlane's DC Multiverse line, definitely this one. you get such a larger variety of characters. For the most part, for the vast majority of the time, the sculpting, the paint work, the amount of detail, the quality control, it was all there. It was all really good. And right now with McFarlane's DC Multiverse line, we're just getting a lot of Batman and Dark Knight's death metal, and not a lot of other stuff. Like, I'm only collecting one version of a character. I'm not like, except for Batman, because Batman's like my favorite character of all time, but I'm not buying multiple Superman figures. I'm not buying multiple Nightwings or Red Hoods or Jokers or whatever. I'm buying one. So if you want me to be buying figures from your toy line, you need to give me different characters. You need to give me a large variety and large quantity of characters, and that's what you get with this line here. And so far, we're not seeing that in McFarlane's Multiverse line. Now, the pros and cons of collecting this line, like I said, the pros, you're looking at sculpting and paint detail done by the Four Horsemen, so the quality is there. However, the other side of that sword, the other edge of that sword is this line is done, which means you're not going to find it on the shelves of your major retailers. You're not going to find it at Walgreens, Target, Walmart, nowhere like that. You might find some of these left over, especially from the later versions of the line. You might find some of these at like hobby shops and comic book stores and like on a discount rack, but some of these, especially the older ones all the way back from the superheroes iteration of the line, yeah, you're not going to find those other than just by going to comic cons, different comic conventions, or pop culture conventions, or just outright going on eBay or Amazon or Mercari, wherever the hell online you like to buy stuff, and just finding them on there. So that is a downside, but it is still fun to collect them. It's the DC line that I've chosen to devote most of my attention to right now. As you can see, I've acquired a decent number of them. My goal was to complete my both my DC Animated Universe Justice League, which I did, and then also my 1990s to early 2000s JLA Justice League, which I also completed. And moving on from here, I don't know where I'm going to go with it. I'm probably going to continue to collect characters that are from prominent from the DC Animated Universe, but we'll see. But yeah, other than being hard to find, it's a great toy line. I highly recommend it, especially if you're a DC fan, and also if you're just like wanting a really good line of superhero figures to collect. I will say Marvel Legends is probably more convenient just because they're more readily available. But if you just happen to like DC characters more, then maybe this is the one for you. So that's my take on that. Let me know what you guys think. If anybody has any other good points about this line that I failed to mention, please leave a comment below. Check out my Facebook page, The Chad Nerd. Subscribe to the channel. Give the video a like, and I will see you guys next time.